Well, welcome back, and want to continue on with our look at blood alcohol level and some of the things that influence how quickly that level rises, and talk about some of the myths and things that cause it to drop. In actuality, there's only two things that cause it to drop, and a whole lot of bad information and bad products that are out there that are touted to help it drop. There's five basic, and a few others, but there's five basic factors that have an impact on how quickly it rises. Again, you may be familiar with some of them. You may not be. You may know some information about this. This might be a little different spin on some of these things. The very first one that has an impact on blood alcohol level and how quickly it rises is the sex of the person who's drinking. Female blood alcohol level rises a little faster than her male counterpart. And again, not a drastic amount, but it's a measurable amount. Okay? Now, there's a reason for that. Okay? And always, if I'm mentioning this in a group setting, I always ask people, especially the women in the group, to hear it all the way to the end. Don't throw anything at me, and just hear the explanation. Female body is made up of more water weight by volume than men, and it's also made up of more what's called adipose tissue, which is fatty tissue. I don't mean this. I mean non-muscle tissue. Where that plays into this, okay, one of the factors, I guess, that causes or influences how quickly this rises is blood supply. Now, when we talk about blood supply, we're not talking about the amount of blood. All of us have the same amount. When we talk about blood supply, we're talking about the transportation system, vessels, veins, arteries, kind of the roadways, how it gets to where it needs to be. Okay. If you look at, this might be kind of a strange comparison, but if you look at the body as two warehouses, the more adipose tissue you have, the less muscle tissue you have. The more muscle tissue you have, if you remember when we did the segment on medical aspects and we talked about something called homeostasis, about balance, in with the good, out with the bad. Well, as energy comes in, waste product has to be disposed of. Well, muscle tissue uses an extreme amount of energy and raw material to be able to function. And if you use a large amount of raw material, you got a lot of waste product. You got a lot of junk left over to get rid of. Well, the more muscle mass you have, the more muscle tissue you have, the more blood supply you need to get material in, get waste product out. I had used a number of years ago as an example. If you own a business or you know of a business that does a lot of very brisk business, a grocery store, some type of supply house where there's a lot of new material coming in and a lot of stuff going out, you'll see in their warehouse these huge amounts of bay doors. You can tell how busy a business is by the number of bay doors they have. They need a lot of access to get stuff out and have new material delivered in. In this area here, not too far from here, there's a huge warehouse complex, and the name escapes me right now, but this place has about 300 bay doors in it. It's a central shipping point for, Walmart, who knows. It's a huge complex. They need that amount of bay doors because there's a lot of material coming in and a lot of stuff going out. Our blood supply is just like that. The more material we need to come in to supply the muscle tissue, the more access ports we need, and the more trash, the more waste product we have, the more ports we need to dispose of all that. So the more you have, the more opportunity you have for alcohol to be absorbed out of the bloodstream. Now, that doesn't mean alcohol's not there anymore. It's just not measured in the person's bloodstream. It's in the liver, in the brain, in wherever it's going to go. So again, the more access you have, the lower your blood alcohol level or slower it's going to appear to rise. With adipose tissue, which is non-muscle tissue, fatty tissue is storage. If you have a warehouse or you have a company that maybe doesn't do a whole lot of transfer of new stuff in, old material coming in and out, that type of thing, you may see a warehouse that has one door because they don't need a lot of access ports. It's a very slow-moving, more storage than anything else. A lot of times in these huge warehouses, stuff that hits the warehouse probably doesn't stay very long because it's shipped right back out again. In a situation like this, you may have stuff that comes out on a very slow pace or certainly nothing like this. So the less access you need to that, the less bay doors, the less ports you need to be able to get your material out. This is storage, and that's what fatty tissue is. It's storage of energy, okay? So the less you need. So the less muscle mass you have, the less blood supply you have. Again, not talking about blood volume. We all have the same of that. We're talking about the transportation system, how it gets where it needs to be. The more muscle tissue, the more blood supply. The more fatty tissue, the less blood supply, okay? Female blood alcohol level rises a little faster. And again, I can't stress enough, we're not talking about drastic amounts. We're talking about a measurable amount, but not a huge amount, okay? The next one that most people are probably familiar with, but you may not know what the real factor is in all of this. When we talk about weight, most people certainly, if you ask anybody on the street what influences blood alcohol level and that kind, most people, almost to a person, will tell you, well, it's the size of the person. Most people even know the old adage, the bigger you are, the more you can hold, and that kind of thing. Weight plays a point or plays a part, but it's not just the weight. There's a factor that is involved in this that most people don't realize. I always tell people, and I think it's a good start, and it's certainly a way to be careful and cautious. If you go into a restaurant and you order a drink, whether it's a soda or an alcoholic beverage, and you get a cocktail napkin, on a lot of establishments, on the napkins on the back, they have the chart. If I drink this amount over a certain amount of time, and if I weigh this at the end of a particular time, my blood alcohol level should be this. That's a great indicator, and it's a great jumping off point. It's a good starting point. But unfortunately, most of those charts are based on the perfect individual. And you'll see where a lot of people have kind of tripped themselves up. I couldn't possibly drink enough to get to this level, so I sure couldn't get to this level. I used the chart. Okay, there's factors involved that chart doesn't necessarily take into consideration. Suppose we have, and I do this as an example in the groups as well. Suppose we're a research group and we've got a little money left over and we want to spend it, and maybe so we can extend a grant and that kind of thing. And we're sitting around brainstorming and we're thinking, how can we spend this money on something that might be of value and maybe even might be fun to do? Well, suppose somebody comes up with the idea. You always hear the bigger they are, the more they can hold. Why don't we try to prove that? Well, it's been proven a zillion times, but just for the sake of argument, suppose it never has, and we decide, let's do that. Well, it's a very simple study and experiment to set up. You advertise for some subjects. You're probably not going to have a whole lot of problem getting subjects because you advertise free food, free booze, we'll pay you, come on in. We'll probably have to beat them off with a stick. We'll have so many people applying for this. Well, suppose we want to kind of keep our numbers down, what they call an N value, And we decide we're going to have 100 subjects. We're going to have an N of 100. Now, one way to make this happen a little quicker, a little more expedient, is we're going to pair people up. We're going to do 2 folks at a time, going to give them alcohol, test their blood alcohol level, watch how their blood alcohol level behaves, have their weight be a factor in all of this, and then we'll make a determination. Okay? So now we have, and the easiest way to show that weight might play into this, suppose we take our first pair, and we decide maybe we've done our homework. Maybe somebody already knows that sex is a factor in this. So we make sure our pair are 2 men or two women. And we have, let's say one person weighs 250 pounds. And the other person weighs half that much, 125 or so. Well, we look at that and say, well, that's kind of an obvious thing. The bigger you are, the more you can hold. This person's blood alcohol level is going to rise faster because there's more of this person to hide it in. Okay? But we've already committed to the study, so we start giving our subjects their drinks. And maybe after the first drink, we take a breathalyzer, or maybe we have the facility to do a blood test and get a true BAL. And we find out, much to nobody's surprise, this person's blood alcohol level is rising a little faster. And you think, well, so what? That's what we expect. We keep giving them drinks. Now, we make sure there's a couple of other factors that are constant that we'll look at here in a minute. Okay? And we're making sure all that's being done. The only variable we have is the weight of the person. And then we see, over the course of 4 or 5 drinks, we see something that looks like this. And we think, well, okay, big deal. That's what we expected. Pardon me. Well, we take our other 49 pair of people, and we do the same. We just replicate this over and over and over again. And we find out that the person who weighs more, his blood alcohol level is rising slower. All other factors equal. So obviously weight is a factor. It's not that simple in research. Very often, before you can take something that might be a theory or a statement, one study doesn't prove it. Now you have to do something very often, and I remember this from research days years and years ago. One of the things that you have to do now to make it more of the possibility of being a fact, now you have to try to disprove it. And if you can't disprove it, I know that sounds a little convoluted, but if you can't disprove it, you just strengthened your case that yes, this might be more of a fact than a theory. So we scratch our heads and we think of ways that how are we going to try to disprove that weight is not involved in this. Well, one way to do it, suppose we pair people up, all other factors equal, and the people weigh the same thing. Well, if they weigh the same thing, their blood alcohol level, again, all factors equal, their blood alcohol level should increase at the same rate. Okay? That way we know we can't disprove it because we just strengthened our cause kind of one step further. So now what we decide to do, we take our 100 subjects, we pair them up, maybe in the afternoon now, second session. We pair them up as close to weight as we possibly can. Okay? It's never going to be perfect, but as close as you can. Okay? Okay? You got 2 people that weigh the same thing. Now, they're both men, both women. Again, all factors equal, and the other ones we'll talk about here in a minute. And we look at that. Now, we also want to make sure we do a breathalyzer or a blood test before we do the second run, because we want to make sure everybody's at 0. We don't want anybody getting a head start if it's our group from in the morning. And we really want to use the same because you don't want to kind of poison the well by bringing 100 different people in for this part of the experiment because, there could be some extraneous factors that play into it and that kind of. So you want to make sure you got the same group. So everybody's at 0 again. You tell them same instructions. We're going to feed you some drinks. We're going to test your blood alcohol level, breathalyzer or blood test over the course of time. Okay. Well, we look at this and we think, well, this is kind of really a little silly to do this because the bigger you are, the more you can hold. We kind of proved it here. If you weigh the same thing, if weight's a factor, then probably obviously they're going to rise at the same. So now all of a sudden we start feeding drinks, and our first pair, this person's blood alcohol level's rising faster. And you think, geez, right out of the box, we've screwed this up. We just disproved because the very first pair, and somebody said, well, maybe there's some other variable. Let's keep going. Maybe we messed up. Maybe we read something wrong. And then you finish that run with that pair, and their blood alcohol level is still rising a little faster than their counterpart. And you look at that. Well, now you can't just say, well, and I know sometimes it's tempting to say, well, this person kind of messes up our study. We'll just throw them out. We'll just, they're not a part of this. Okay. Well, ethically, you can't do that. They're a part of what you're doing. And you think, well, maybe it's a fluke. Maybe the other 49 pair that we're going to look at, that something is going on there that we just don't understand. So we do our other 49 pair, and for most of them, they're pretty much at the same rate. And we may have an occasional blip where somebody, maybe one person in that pair is rising a little faster. Well, now at the end of the day, we've got this data, okay? We had a situation where weight obviously played a factor in this in our first study. Well, now all of a sudden, weight seems to not be as much of a factor as we thought. Well, we can't just walk away, especially if we're spending somebody else's money. Now we have to try to figure out, how did that happen? We tried to prove this, and instead of proving it, we ended up disproving that maybe weight's not as much of a factor. Now we got to figure out how we're going to do this. Now we're sitting around brainstorming, and I know you're smarter than the average folk out there. So I want you to just, for a minute, pretend like you're just the average man or woman on the street. Like I said earlier, I do a variation of this in the general public and, for community groups and that type of thing. And I'll ask this question. What do you think is going on here? What might be the difference? And the two answers I get all the time are these. Okay? One, must be metabolism. Maybe this guy's burning it up faster than the other guy. Okay? And I tell people that's a great answer, except it's not right. Okay? Alcohol, if you remember when we did the medical aspects segment a little while ago, I had talked in there about alcohol has kind of a dual personality. It's certainly a drug, but it also is a food. And it's been talked about and discussed as the perfect food, and we went through some of the reasons why. Well, here's where you kind of see a weird characteristic of food. Metabolism is how quickly you burn something up, how fast you oxidize something, how fast you use it up. You can speed up your metabolism a little bit. If you ate too much and you run around, you exercise, you can burn a little bit, not a whole lot, but you can kind of adjust your metabolism by exertion and exercise. Alcohol is the perfect food. It oxidizes, detoxes at a constant rate. Okay? And that's an ounce per hour. You can't speed that up. You can't slow that down. That's a constant. It's built in. There's only one time that constant doesn't hold true, and we'll talk about that in the next segment when we talk about blood alcohol level and the number being used as a diagnostic indicator and that type of thing. Okay, so metabolism, again, is a great answer. It's just not correct. Okay, the next one that people come up with, and they think, well, here's an obvious situation. If it's not metabolism, it's got to be tolerance. Okay? People think, well, that sounds like a very credible answer, but unfortunately, that's not correct either. Tolerance is how a person behaves at a certain level of intoxication. It's not a function, and this might sound a little twisted, it's not a function of amount, okay? It's a function of how a person reacts to that amount. Okay? To give you an example, if you've got two friends who are drinking drink for drink, and again, kind of all things are equal, and after a couple drinks, one person's saying, well, I'm just finally now starting to prime the pump, and, this is going to be a good night, and then you've got the friend who's starting to fall asleep and maybe slide under the table. That's tolerance. You've got the same amount of alcohol on board, but they're behaving and reacting in a completely different way. As a comparison, I'll mention if a person, suppose you come into group one night and I've got a box of candy. Somebody's giving me a big box of candy and I want to share that with everybody. So I pass it around the room and everybody gets a piece of candy and I get the box back and you look in the box and there's still a lot left. It's like, I think we can go one more round. Anybody want a second piece? And go around the room. And then I get it back and there's still enough in there that I think we can go one more time around. Anybody want a third piece? We go around the room with it. Well, after that third piece, maybe there's somebody sitting there who's starting to sweat a little bit. Maybe they're starting to get a little anxious. Maybe the person's diabetic and they shouldn't have had 3 pieces of candy. You have 3 pieces of candy on board. They have 3 on board. How your body reacts to it is what tolerance is all about. So again, when somebody says, well, this person, it's got to be, if it's, one person's rising a little faster than the other and all factors are equal, it's got to be metabolism or it's got to be tolerance. Okay? And I'll tell people again, great answers, they're just not correct. It's a very obvious thing. Suppose this person is a professional ball player. He's a linebacker, a bodybuilder. Okay? Suppose this other poor schlub looks like me. We might weigh the same thing, but what makes up that weight are 2 different things. Weight is a factor, but body type is the critical piece. Is there more muscle mass or more non-muscle mass? So again, like I said, that little cocktail napkin very often, gives you an indicator, gives you something to kind of look at and to make a determination. But in the long run, it's not just the weight of the person; it's what makes up that weight. Okay, so it's body type. Okay, the next one. And number 3 and number 4, for years I used to put together because they almost go kind of hand in hand. They tie in together. Okay. The third one that has an impact is what they call time of consumption. Now, to give you a little story from my background, I'd mentioned earlier that I am alcoholic. I'm in recovery, been sober a long, long time. I can remember, in AA we talk about stinking thinking or rationalization and that type of thing. I remember years and years ago, and you probably have had some experience with this too. Years ago, as kids, we were told, and I think they still tell children this in school today, we were told that breakfast was the most important meal of the day, because your metabolism is higher than it's going to be at any time during the day when you first wake up. Again, as the body falls asleep, everything starts to dial down. Your heart rate slows down, your respiration slows down, metabolism slows down. The body doesn't need the energy source, so everything kind of gets, like on a dimmer switch, it gets dialed down. First thing in the morning, when all that stuff is cranking back up, your metabolism is higher than it's going to be because it needs that energy source. It starts pulling stuff and burning those calories as fast as it can. So time of consumption, this is, again, alcoholic thinking. Before I got sober, I had this bright idea. You know how you hear those little things and everybody knows the old adage about more will be revealed to you later, or its value will be revealed later? I heard my mom, the nuns, everybody and his brother talk about breakfast was the most important meal. Well, I tucked that away back here for future reference. And when I decided to pull it out, it was for all the wrong reasons. I made this decision one day that time of consumption, if your metabolism is higher first thing in the morning than it is at any other time during the day, I bet if I drink at 6 o'clock in the morning, I won't get into half as much trouble as if I drink at 6 o'clock in the evening. Okay? Now again, that's addict thinking. When we talk about time of consumption, we're not talking about time of day. We're talking about rate. How fast are you throwing them in there? Okay? Stands to reason. Okay? The faster you're throwing them back, the faster your blood alcohol level is going to rise. So again, it's got nothing, I know that sounds kind of corny, but again, I hear it. It's what we deal with every day. Time of consumption is the rate. How fast is it going in? Okay? The fourth one, and this is one that I think a lot of people really struggle with. This has tripped up a lot of folks over the years. And that's quantity. Now, most people look at that and say, well, that's a no-brainer. The more you drink, the higher it's going to go. The faster you drink it, the quicker it's going to get there. It's like, geez, what's the point? Quantity, again, is a slippery slope. Okay? The reason for that is most people, when they hear a drink, people have a preconceived notion of what that means, what that entails. For most people, a drink means the glass you've got in your hand. Okay? What you're holding in your hand. Okay? Suppose you have two people. Let me give you a little quick example here. Most of you certainly know my artwork leaves a lot to be desired. Okay? Use your imagination, especially with this. You have the same size glass. Okay? Suppose you have an 8-ounce glass. Okay? You can do this with beer and wine, but just for the mechanics of this, works a little better with mixed drinks. Okay? For the example portion of this. Now, suppose somebody decides they want to have a mixed drink. Okay? Now, the normal mixed drink you would see in an 8-ounce glass or cup or whatever it might be, okay, usually is an ounce of a shot glass, kind of three fingers, okay, of alcohol, and the rest would be orange juice, soda, tonic water, whatever your mixer is. Okay. So that's the real definition of a drink, not the size of the cup or the container. It's the amount of alcohol. So 1 ounce is one drink. Okay. Now suppose, for the sake of argument, and this is where it gets a little sticky for people. Suppose I'm having a party. Now again, this would have been years ago, and in fact, I need to come up with a different example, because if it was years ago, I wouldn't have invited you, because I'd have to share everything I had. But just for the sake of argument, okay, here we have, you're coming to my party, and you're all new friends, and I want to make sure you have a really good time. So I ask somebody, what can I get you? And you say, well, kind of had a hankering all day for a gin and tonic. It's like, okay, I can do that. Now suppose, again, people say this is an exaggeration, but it's not. Okay? Suppose you're all new friends, want to make sure you have a good time. Suppose I reverse the formula. And I give you 7 ounces of gin and 1 ounce of tonic water. Okay? Now, I've had people say, wait a minute, come on, we're not stupid. I know the difference between that and that. And it's like, I'm not saying you don't, but watch what happens, okay? I fix that drink for you. I hand that to you. You take the first sip and go, whew, good Lord, that'll peel the paint off the wall. But I will bet you $1,000 you don't hand it back and say you missed, try again. Now all of a sudden your plans change. I need to sip this one slow. Okay? You've got an 8-ounce cup. They have one, you have one. That's the equivalent of 7 drinks. Okay? You got the same size container. It's what's in there that counts. I ask my DWI folks, and I've asked this question forever, and I'll ask you the same question, and I know you probably already know the answer, but I will ask, person gets pulled over. Okay? They're sitting on the side of the road, and they're starting to sweat a little bit, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me. Last thing I want to do is make this worse, so I'm going to be as honest as I can. The officer comes up to the window, and you roll the window down, and he or she asks you a few questions, and then they ask you, have you been drinking this evening? Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I'm not going to, not going to lie to you. And then they ask you that fateful question, how many have you had? And I've asked this question 1,000,000 times. And I've never had anybody get it wrong. What do you think the universal answer is? Absolutely 2. I just had 2. Okay? Or a couple. I have never heard anybody say, well, the officer asked me how many I had, and I had to ask him what comes after 17, or what comes after. It's 2. And the officer says, yeah, I don't think so, but, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's do a breathalyzer. Oh, okay, fine. I only had 2, okay. Whatever you say. And they do a breathalyzer, and all of a sudden, that happens. Or that happens. And you blow the top off of it. It's like something's got to be wrong with your equipment, officer, because I only had 2. Maybe you did. Did you have 2 of these or 2 of these? You see it happen all the time. In my story, I tell folks all the time, I kind of minimized my use a little bit. I'd come home at night, and my wife would ask, you been drinking? Yeah. How many did you have? Just 1. And she said, 1? Yeah, just 1. I wasn't lying. I just wasn't telling the whole truth. 1 carries a lot of latitude. 1 what? 1 beer, 1/5, 1 6-pack, 1/2 gallon. Okay, I just had 1. When somebody says I just had a couple, was it a few of these or a few of those? Very often, like I said, I've seen so many people that think I must be okay because I've had 2, and then find out that the 2 somebody else was mixing for them, and I want you to have a good time and that kind of, and they end up with numbers that they can't imagine that they could ever achieve. It's not the size of the cup or the container. It's what's in it. That's the major part. Okay? Also, another little constant here that we'll come back to in the next segment. Alcohol detoxes at the rate of 1 ounce per hour, and each ounce of alcohol raises a person's blood alcohol level approximately a 0.02. Okay, so keep that in mind when we look at the next segment here in a bit. Okay, so now we've talked about the sex of the person drinking has an impact. The weight of the person has an impact, but it's not just the bulk. It's what makes up the weight, it's body type, time of consumption, how fast you're throwing them back, and quantity. Okay, and again, not just the size of the cup, but what's in it. The last one we're going to look at here, and then we're going to take a look at 2 things that cause blood alcohol level to drop. And there's only 2 things. And again, there's a lot of scams and myths and really bad information about those 2 things, or some things additional to those 2 things. The 5th one has an impact, but I still look at it as, if a person continues to drink, and you certainly never want to see him in a situation like this again with illegal impact and that type of thing. I've seen more people get in trouble as a result of not knowing how much they actually really had. And then the other culprit is one that I think has been a gold standard for a long time, and it doesn't have that much influence, or at least as much influence as people think. That's food consumption. Very often people say, well, if you just eat a big meal before you go somewhere, you'll be fine, and on and on and on. That's true to a point, okay? Remember, again, when we talked about in another segment, alcohol's the perfect food. It's already in its usable form. It doesn't have to be broken down. It doesn't have to be digested. A bologna sandwich or an apple or whatever it is has to go through the process and takes about 45 minutes before it goes from your stomach to your small intestines. Alcohol's in its pure form, so it's absorbed through the lining of your stomach. It gets into your bloodstream within seconds, certainly not minutes and half hour, 45 minutes kind of thing. Food consumption can slow the process down because it acts as a sponge or it acts as a block, okay? But that big meal you ate, within about a half hour, 45 minutes, is gone. I'll give you another little story from my own personal history. Back in high school, I had 3 friends that I used to hang around with all the time. And on Fridays, each one of us had a particular job and situation we were responsible for, and we would change these duties around to kind of keep it fresh. Every Friday night, one of us was responsible for finding the party. One of us would be responsible for getting us to the party. One of us would be responsible for stealing something from mom or dad from the liquor cabinet, getting an older brother or sister, or paying some guy, a couple bucks to go into the liquor store for you and that kind of thing. The most important person in the mix, and you might think it would be one of those 3, but again, this is how we thought. The most important person in the mix was the person who brought the buttermilk. And what we would do with that buttermilk, and if you like buttermilk, God love you. That's just not something I can, my family's from the South, and buttermilk was a very common occurrence. I just never acquired a taste for it. That and liver are the 2 things that, no chance. Well, we would drink buttermilk because it's thick, it coats your stomach, and in the back of your mind, it's like, well, if I just coat my stomach with, as bad as the stuff tasted, you knew that you were going to be safe for the rest of the party. Well, the problem is, buttermilk is a food. The stomach's going to break it down. It's going to be digested, and then it's gone. Okay? You might be safe for the first half hour or 45 minutes of the party, but your little stopgap here, your dam here is gone. We had a guy that we used to go to school with that, again, kind of took this to a whole nother level. And this wasn't sick thinking, I don't know what is. He couldn't stand buttermilk, so what he decided he was going to do to make this work was he would drink a small bottle of olive oil before every party. Okay? Now, what he found out, just like us, in about 45 minutes, the olive oil's gone, and he'd get just as drunk as everybody else. Difference is, in the morning, he had one hell of a case of diarrhea. So there was kind of the consequence wasn't worth the action. Okay? Very often, if people say food consumption certainly has an impact, watch what happens. Go back to my party. Suppose my party's at 8 o'clock to midnight. Okay? If you eat a big meal before you go to a party, there's a pretty good chance you're not going to eat it at 7:45 or 7:30. You're going to eat it at 5 o'clock, 5:30, whatever your normal dinner time is. Well, by the time you get to the party, that big meal is gone. There's nothing there. Now, I had a guy theoretically tell me one time that you could override this. Now, this is an addict thinking. You could override this by taking a bite, taking a sip, taking a bite, taking a sip, kind of stay in one head of, that's kind of homeostasis in a very twisted way. Well, of course, certainly not going to work. Don't ever let that be your ace in the hole. The reason something like that may not work, again, if you go to that party and you had a big meal beforehand, or a lot of people say, well, I'm not going to eat because I'm going to the party. I'll just wait till the party. I have never yet, and again, like I said, I've been sober a long time, but people still offer, go to a restaurant, go to any social engagement, go to a party. I have never, ever heard anybody, when they walk into the house, into the establishment, ask, what are you eating? First thing they ask is, what are you drinking? What can I get you to drink? So if your idea of I'll just eat something and then that goes kind of out the window the minute you sit down, because the first thing they ask you is, what do you want to drink? Okay? Food consumption plays a role, but it's not the end-all, be-all that people think. If I eat a lot, I'll be safe. Okay? Anything you put in your stomach is going to be digested, and when it's gone, it's gone. And if you continue to drink and pour more onto, it's going to get right involved. Like I said, it is immediately absorbed by the lining of your stomach, and there's nothing there to slow it down. So food consumption is not the big thing that everybody thinks it is. There's two things, and there's a few others that are involved, but these are kind of the big ones that most people know about, learn about, talk about. Okay? There's two things that cause blood alcohol level to drop, and a whole lot of myths and that type of thing. There's one that I love, and hopefully I won't get sued for mentioning, because I never remember the exact name of the product. There's a product that you can buy, and it's usually in a very conspicuous place in a convenience store where you're going in at 1 or 2 in the morning to get a cup of coffee or something to drink, and I need to sober up on the way home. There's a little packet that they sell, and there's a couple of different manufacturers, that goes by really corny names like Sober Up, Sober Quick, Sober Haul, all these kind of really goofy marketing names that are guaranteed to sober you up immediately. Now you look at that and they're $9.95, it's $10, but you might think, well, $10 as opposed to getting a DWI, maybe it's a good $10 invested. You take this package of powder and you pour it in your soda, your coffee, your water, whatever you're drinking, okay? And supposedly it magically eliminates the alcohol. Problem is, if you look at the ingredients, this thing's like 200% caffeine. Okay? The only thing it does is it wakes you up. And I know this sounds corny and flip to some people. If you get pulled over and you were going to blow a 1.5, having not drank this magic elixir, if you get pulled over and you have had some of this stuff, you're still going to blow a 1.5. You're just going to be really awake when it happens. There's only two things that cause blood alcohol level to drop. People talk about cups of black coffee, and an old Father Martin joke, I love it. When what do you get when you give a drunk black coffee? You get a wide awake drunk. Well, the only reason that black coffee or running around the block, taking a cold shower, all the things that people are told that will speed this process up, okay, they work to a point, but not for the reason people think. Okay? There's two things that cause blood alcohol level to drop, and you don't have to spend a dime to get them. They're already built in. One's kind of an obvious, silly one. Don't put any more in. Stop adding to the pile. And the most critical one is time. Alcohol detoxes at the rate of 1 ounce per hour. You can't speed it up. You can't slow it down, except in that one instance that we'll look at in the next segment. Okay? The only reason why 15 cups of black coffee helps sober you up, or running around the block, unless you were like me, and when I had a cup of coffee back in the day, it was more gin than coffee. But if you have a true cup of coffee, it takes time to drink a couple cups of coffee. And you're not adding any more to the system. It's not the coffee. It's not the exercise. It's not running around the block. It's not taking a cold shower. You're not adding more to the mix, and you're giving time for what's in there to dissipate. Those are the only two things that cause blood alcohol level to drop. And like I said, there are a whole lot of myths and half-truths and that type of thing. So want to conclude this segment, and like I had mentioned earlier, in the next segment what we're going to look at is I'm going to put a chart up here that compares two people, the social drinker and the alcoholic, and we'll go through different behaviors and how we can use this as a diagnostic tool and a clinical thing too, not just a legal snare. Okay? And you'll see the difference between those two people. That's where tolerance comes into play. Okay? Thanks for being here, and we'll see you in a little bit. Thanks.